Hello there. My name is Risa Yosia Sunindio, and today I would like to share with you this unique research on community resilience in kampung in Surabaya, Indonesia. Before we dive into the research, I think it's important to understand the context. Where is Surabaya? Surabaya is a city in Indonesia. So this is the map of Indonesia. On the north of the country, we have Singapore and Malaysia, and also the Philippines. On the east, we have Papua New Guinea, and on the south, we have Australia. Indonesia is the fourth most populous country in the world after China, India, and the US. Jakarta is the capital city of Indonesia, and Surabaya over here is the capital of East Java province. It is located about 700 kilometers east of Jakarta. If we see the population, Jakarta is obviously the most populous city in the country. Greater Jakarta has a population of 34 million people. In comparison, the city of Surabaya has a population of 3.5 million people, while Greater Surabaya's population is 8.5 million people. So therefore, the city is highly urbanized. So then, what is kampung? Kampung is an urban traditional settlement type and houses the majority of the population in Indonesia. In Surabaya, kampung are distributed throughout the city, making up more than 60% of the city area. Residents in kampung are mixed and include both very poor and middle-income families. Kampung are commonly perceived by people as slum-like habitats. However, this is not the case for most kampung in Surabaya. Kampung inhabitants in Surabaya are committed to improve their living environments. The government, together with community in kampung, has also successfully implemented improvement programs in kampung. As such, kampung is a unique part of the city and also an enduring heritage. The residents have thrived and survived through many generations, and they display strong resiliency. These photos show some environments in kampung. So the first one here, we can see a kampung gate. So usually for you to access a kampung, you need to pass a kampung gate. And again, usually there are many kampung gates within one kampung. So it means you can access that kampung from different entry points. The second picture shows an alleyway in kampung. So sometimes the alleyway can be quite wide, as you can see in this picture, and in another case, the alleyway can be quite narrow. And the third picture gives an example of social activities in kampung. So it's quite normal for kampung inhabitants to interact with one another, as you can see in this photo, where kampung inhabitants sit together in front of their houses and interact with one another. In terms of facilities in kampung, just some examples. This picture shows a place of worship, and then some kampung also have communal bathrooms, which obviously can be used by the kampung inhabitants. This photo shows an example of an economic activity in kampung. So it's very normal for kampung inhabitants to participate in informal economic activities. So here you can see some kampung inhabitants actually open a food stall near their houses. And again, in some cases, there are some heritage buildings or heritage architecture within a kampung as shown here. This research is about community resilience, which is the capacity of a community to recover quickly from difficulties. If you want to understand about community resilience, in most cases, people use top-down approaches. So top-down approaches produce resiliency frameworks developed usually by governments and policymakers, and in some cases, international organizations. And currently, this approach dominates current research on resiliency. So this approach tends to use objective resilience measurements, which examine tangible factors such as physical resources and socioeconomic data that make a community resilient. On the opposite side, we also have bottom-up approaches to understand community resilience. While both top-down approaches are important, but the intangible factors such as personal and socio-cultural values may be neglected in this kind of top-down objective assessment of community resilience. So therefore, top-down approaches should be complemented by bottom-up approaches. Evidence shows that local knowledge helps strengthening community resilience. There is an example where communities experience social learning by sharing memories and experiences to cope with flooding, for example. So bottom-up approaches are helpful for understanding problems and opportunities at a local scale. The last part I would like to introduce is about everyday resilience. So research in resilience tends to focus on big disaster events that do not occur frequently, like an earthquake. So this research, in contrast, focuses on community resilience towards daily risks, which refer to pressure in everyday life that may affect households like financial losses, crime, housing damage, injuries, and also the community as a whole, such as flooding, fire, drugs, and disease outbreak. So these phenomena are best observed using bottom-up approaches. So therefore, we would like to get a new perspective on resilience through this research based on a people-centered approach from those people who actually live in kampung. So we visited a kampung in Surabaya and talked to kampung inhabitants. We also observed facilities, physical environments, and social activities in the kampung. So this is a bottom-up approach to reveal factors that make this community resilient. From the data that we collected, we can identify three community resilience strategies. The first one, as you can see here, is social networks. So the community builds resilience by having social networks, including neighbors, relatives, friends, the women's group, the elderly group, and the religious group. So one kampung inhabitant gave an example of the importance of the neighbor. So this person said, if anything happens, our siblings are far, our neighbors are number one. So kampung inhabitants create a sense of community, which enables them to collect, share stories, and learn from different experiences. This is supported by the physical characteristics of the kampung, which consists of small alleyways, which in turn provide opportunities for informal interactions between neighbors. The kampung community is a social network that has been built over time and generations. And this network supports the continuity of the informal economy in kampung. Second, as you can see here, kampung community members in the kampung develop place-based adaptation or place attachment. The term, "I like this place because this is my own kampung," was repeatedly expressed by kampung inhabitants. So housing, adaptation, and improvements were easily observable in kampung. For example, to cope with the potential of flooding and damage to the kampung, residents raise the floor level in their houses. Communal works are common to prevent flooding and maintain cleanliness in kampung. So because of this strong place attachment, physical improvements and investments are valued by kampung inhabitants. Livelihood adaptation is another prominent aspect in the kampung, where residents have diverse income generating activities. Many kampung inhabitants, especially women, support their families by opening kiosks, salon or barber shop, laundry or other type of home-based enterprises embedded within the everyday life of the kampung. And then the location of the kampung in the inner city helps the residents access public facilities such as education facilities, health facilities, markets, town halls, and entertainment facilities. The last community resilience strategy is political networks. Having political networks between local government and kampung communities also support resilience. In the case study where we collected our data, kampung members rely on community leaders and the local government to provide support. Just to conclude, in building resilience, it is important to us resilience to what and resilience for whom. While many resilience tools and approaches have been directed towards rapid onset disasters such as floods and earthquakes, daily risks often faced by urban populations should not be neglected. As a type of local urbanism, kampung has endured as a resilient and long-lasting heritage. Key to this longevity is the notion of everyday resilience, which is concerned with chronic risks and microeconomic phenomena. So this study proposes three strategies in building urban community resilience to guide future resilience frameworks and help urban communities cope with daily risks. First, community resilience relies on strengthening social networks. Social networks in kampung extends from neighbors, relatives, women's groups, elderly groups, to neighboring kampung networks. Second, community resilience builds on place attachment. Kampung residents are creative and adapt to the place where they live. Diversification of livelihood and informal economies are finely tuned to the urban system. Third, community resilience relies upon linkages between communities and local government. Support from community leaders and government is crucial for building a stronger community. So this research serves as a foundation to further investigate resilience networks that exist in local urban communities. It demonstrates the necessity to consider social, political, and place-based strategies for enhancing such networks. The findings can be applied to a local community or a similar urban vulnerable community to enhance their everyday resilience. This study reiterates the importance of thinking beyond a top-down approach and looking at a bottom-up approach to understand communities' perspective. If you want to know more about the research actually has been published in the International Journal of Disaster Resilience in the Built Environment, as you can see here. And the title of the research is Narratives of Everyday Resilience, Lessons from an Urban Kampung Community in Surabaya, Indonesia.